Welcome, everyone, to our class where you're going to learn simple words, words you may already know, but perhaps you're not comfortable using them. But they're words that natives use all the time, especially in spoken English. So if you want to sound like a native speaker, this is the lesson for you. So let's look at some words you can use in conversation starters and softener. So, a softener is when you want to soften what you're saying, which means make it sound less harsh or less abrupt. So, you can start with a simple word. Remember, this is about simple words. Well, well, and you wouldn't just say it as well. You would probably say it as more of a questioning. Well, you might hold it out a little bit. Well, during yesterday's team meeting, we agreed to focus on the new marketing strategy first. So, of course, you'll also learn a lot of other vocabulary, grammar, phrasal verbs like focus on, but we're also going to focus on this simple word. So, that simple word is well. So, before you introduce your point, you can use well. So, let's shadow. I'm going to say this and you can repeat after me. Well, during yesterday's team meeting, we agreed to focus on the new marketing strategy first. Okay, so here, notice it's yesterday's team meeting. That's very common because the team meeting belongs to yesterday. Yesterday's team meeting. If you say it another way, you can say during the team meeting yesterday, which is very common as well. Good morning. Hello. Yes, we are live. Okay, everyone. Let's keep going. Our next one. So this is more of a word filler. And yes, in general, you should try to limit the word fillers that you use. A word filler is a word that doesn't contain any meaning, but it really does soften your speech. If you just start speaking and you start with the statement, it might sound quite abrupt. So if you introduce it with just a so after reviewing your report this morning, I have a couple of questions. So you can put this in front of a statement, you can put it even in front of a question. So, when is that report due again? So you can do this in a lot. So notice after, and then you have your verb in ing. After reviewing your report this morning. Remember how we use yesterday's team meeting? You could also say, after reviewing this morning's report, and then the report can belong to this morning. So that's an alternative. So repeat after me. So after reviewing your report this morning, I have a couple of questions. So notice how this couple of questions, it sounds like couple of questions, couple of questions. Couple of technically means two, but native speakers use it to mean a small number of. How about this? Actually, this is one that a lot of students use, but they use incorrectly because actually is used in a very specific way. It's used when you want to clarify information or correct information. So, for example, someone might say, we need to launch today. Okay, that's a statement. We need to launch today. But then you say, actually, I spoke with the client earlier today and they want to delay the launch. So you're clarifying, you're correcting the information that we need to launch today. Actually, the launch is postponed. So you only use actually when you're correcting or clarifying information. And this is where I see students get it wrong. No, it doesn't mean in other words. It means I want to clarify or correct this. So, no, it doesn't mean in other words. And exactly. Thanks, Jennifer, for today's lesson. When you use today, you don't put this or the, but you can put this in front of morning, afternoon, evening, but not today. So you would say, thanks, Jennifer, for today's lesson. Otherwise, you would say, thanks, Jennifer, for the lesson today. Those are your two options. And they're both very common. I see a lot of mistakes with them, like just having this unnecessary this. So you can use both of those structures. Okay, how about this? Honestly, honestly. Of course, this comes from the word honest. So this means that I'm probably going to say something that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe that is a criticism. For example, in this one, honestly, after testing the product, I think we need a few improvements. So if you just say, we need improvements, it might sound quite direct. But if you say, honestly, we need a few improvements, you're softening it a little bit. And no, actually does not mean in fact. Actually means to clarify, to correct. Okay. You can use frankly in this case. Frankly is when you're going to say something directly without trying to make it sound softer than it is. Okay. Now we can also use honestly with positive, generally when it's unexpected and you want the person to know you're being honest. So, for example, if I ask my husband, do you like this shirt? Now, if he wants me to know, he's not just saying yes to be nice, he's saying yes because he believes it. Then he can say, honestly, I love your shirt. So that way I know that he's not just saying it to be nice, although he probably is. Yeah, I see a lot of mistakes with the use of actually. Okay. Yeah, you can also use to be honest. To be honest. Um seriously has the same meaning, but they're not interchangeable. It seriously would be more like I'm not joking. Seriously, I slept for 14 hours last night. I wouldn't say honestly, I slept for 14 hours. I would say seriously, I slept for 14 hours. If I'm not trying to exaggerate or to let you know, like, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not joking. Seriously, I ate the whole cake. Because some people might say, I ate the whole cake, and they're just exaggerating. But if you say seriously, then they know you're not exaggerating, you're being truthful. Oh, honestly, I do. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. How about this? Well, how about this? If you're enjoying this lesson, well, then show me your support. Put yes, yes, yes in the comments if you're enjoying it. Like this lesson is the best way that you can support the channel. And of course, subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. Yes. So honestly, to be honest, they're exactly the same. To be honest, honestly, I love your shirt. I'm not just saying that, I truly feel that way. Or to be a little more negative, to be honest, that wasn't your best performance. Honestly, that wasn't your best performance. So you can use it in both ways. Woohoo! All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'm so glad you like the way I teach. Woohoo! Awesome, everyone. I'm so glad. To be honest, I love watching your live lessons. And this is a perfect use because when you're directly talking to someone, you say things like, I love your lesson. But if you want me to know you truly mean that, you're not just trying to be nice, you can say, to be honest, I love your live lesson. So great use of that. And woohoo! Lots of engaged students today. And thank you so much for your support. Exactly. If you want to disagree with someone, honestly, I disagree with you. Exactly. Very nice. And also, I have this free speaking guide for you. I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can download this from my website, or you can look for the link in the description, and it's absolutely free. And if you want to keep learning these natural expressions, if you want my feedback on your spoken English and your written English, you can get that in the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium program where I work directly with my students. So if you're interested in getting my support to help you become fluent fast, you can look for more information in the description or go to my website. Okay, and here's a new one. Let me think. Let me think. If you need to buy yourself some time, so if you need more time, you just vocalize instead of just vocalize what you're thinking about. So you can say, let me think. Well, let me think. We discussed that issue in last week's meeting. So maybe someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer immediately. So you can say, let me think. Let me think. Now, let me in spoken English will sound like let me. Let me think. Let me think. Let me think about that. Should we delay the launch? Let me think about that for a minute. Well, so you can combine a lot of these expressions together, and it's very commonly done in spoken English. So everyone repeat after me. Let me think. Let me think. Let me think. Let me think. Okay. So nice to see you again as well. Yeah, give me a sec. Give me a sec. Exactly, exactly. So maybe give me a sec. If someone asks you to find something on your computer, so if I need to open up some folders and find that information, I might just say, give me a sec. And then I can start typing something, or maybe even as I write out one of the explanations, give me a sec. I'm just writing that out. So you can do that as well. Good one. I love that. Thank you for sharing. How about this? I mean, this is a very common one. So before we just say something, you can say I mean as a more informal way of saying I think or I believe, or to clarify what I'm trying to say. I mean, the presentation was clear. Everyone understood the main idea. So you're using this before you share your own opinion. So someone might ask you, was it a good presentation? I mean, it was clear. Everyone understood the main idea. So, yeah, it was good. So, you can absolutely use that. Many native speakers do. I mean. Okay. How about this? Maybe we should schedule another meeting to clarify the client's expectations. So, this is important because if you simply say we should schedule another meeting, you're giving this as your recommendation. And that sounds quite direct. So remember, if you want to soften this, you can start with maybe, perhaps. Maybe we should schedule another meeting. So if I say this, it sounds like I am not sure if this is what we should do. I'm just proposing this as an option. But if I say we should schedule another meeting, well, then it sounds like this is what I want to do. Maybe we should schedule another meeting. So when you say these, you might say it with the matching body language to express that it's just a suggestion. Maybe. That's how we generally show I don't know. Maybe we should schedule another meeting. How about this one? She'll probably. So instead of maybe to me sounds like 50-50. If someone says, are you coming to the party? And I say, maybe, to me, that's 50-50. It's not very committal. Probably sounds like 70-80%. So it sounds a lot more committal. She'll probably join the call after she finishes her presentation. She'll probably. So notice this is in the future simple. She'll probably. If I say maybe she'll join the call, I wouldn't wait. That's a 50-50. She'll probably join the call. I'm going to wait for her before I share information that's important for her. Yeah, if you say she'll for sure join the call, to me, that sounds like 95% to 100%. So it sounds stronger than probably. It sounds like definitely. For sure to me sounds like a more casual way of saying definitely. May is a modal verb, and be is your base verb. It's not the same as maybe, which is spelled as one word. She'll likely join the call. That's another one as well. So likely to me sounds about the same as probably, not as strong as definitely. Yeah, about the same. I don't hear a lot of difference between likely and probably. Okay, how about this? From what I understand, the client is still reviewing the proposal. So, again, if you simply say the client is still reviewing the proposal, it sounds like fact. You're presenting this as fact. Now, if you want the person to know that there's a chance this isn't true, you can add certain starters. For example, from what I understand. From what I understand. This means based on the information you know, but you're acknowledging that it's possible that it's incorrect. So, from what I understand, you could say from what I know, from what I've heard, from what I've seen, from what I've read. It just depends on the context. If you're talking about a written report, it would make sense for you to say, from what I've read, it seems like the report doesn't recommend this safety protocol. But the report is 100 pages and you've only read 80 pages. So there's still a chance that they do discuss the safety protocol. So it just depends if you want to use understand, read, heard, seen. It depends on the context. Yeah, exactly. This is a great one. I like this. From what I understand, the geopolitical situation is not good, isn't good. You don't need it because it is the geopolitical situation. So you're saying the same thing twice. So get rid of it. And then this is a smart move because you're saying it's possible that I'm understanding it incorrectly or my understanding is limited. I like that. Really nicely done. How about this? Ooh, just to clarify. Just to clarify, are we moving forward with the original timeline? So, just to clarify is extremely important because you should be clarifying things. A lot of the times, people assume things. They assume based on their interpretation. They assume based on what they heard. But is your assumption correct? Why not ask? Which is something most people just don't do. But you can ask in a natural way, like a native speaker. A native speaker would probably say something like, just to clarify, just is a word filler. You don't need it, but it softens it. You can absolutely say to clarify, but it sounds a little stronger to say to clarify. It sounds more conversational or softer to say just to clarify, are we moving forward with the original timeline? And then you will get the direct answer so you don't have to assume and your assumption could be wrong. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Just to clarify, are you agree with the terms and conditions? What's the issue here, everyone? Alberto, great job. Excellent sentence, but this is a common mistake I see with a lot of students, so I'm going to use you as an example, but excellent job. Okay, so just to clarify, there's a mistake in here. What is it? You no, you wouldn't say are you agreeing because it agree is not a verb that we would put in an ing form. Do you agree? Exactly. So the question would be do. Do you agree? Do you agree? Yes, I agree. I agree. Do you agree? Exactly. Awesome job, everyone. Don't worry, Alberto. I see that mistake many times. So now you know. Do you agree? All right. Awesome job, everyone. Thank you for helping Alberto out. And that's why we're here. Just to clarify, you all saw that it's a new project our team is making. Yes, very nice. If you make a project, I might assume that you're in construction and you're physically building something because otherwise we don't use the verb make with a project. You complete a project, casually you do a project, but make would be you're in construction and you're building a bridge, for example. So generally, make isn't done. All right. How about this? Well, we already saw it, just to clarify, but let's move on to some other clarifying and rephrasing words that you can use. Yeah, you can work on a project, you can complete a project. Very nice. Basically, the client wants us to reduce costs without changing the design. So let's say you had an hour-long meeting with the client, and the client said many, many different things. This is the summary. This is the essence. So if you take everything the client said, this is the most important thing. Basically, the client wants us to reduce costs without changing the design. Okay. So you could replace this with to summarize, essentially. Essentially would be a more formal way of saying it. Basically is a more casual way. Oh, this is nice. Before we continue, I would like to clarify something I said earlier. Exactly. Exactly. Hence is not a replacement for basically. Hence means therefore. Therefore. And it sounds very formal. Hence isn't really used outside of very formal context. And it means therefore. Yeah. I would say the meaning is the same. Essentially sounds more formal, basically sounds more casual. Not paramount. In a nutshell, yeah, that could be the idiom for it for sure. In a nutshell. So the most important part, the to summarize. Yeah, basically. Basically. How about this? In other words. Okay, in other words is used if again, you give a lot of information and maybe you realize it started to get a little complex, a little confusing. So you can just say, in other words, and then say it very directly, very simply. In other words, the project will be delayed if we don't get approval today. Okay, so you're taking some complex, confusing information and you're summarizing it clearly, concisely. In other words. So we don't just use this just to summarize. We use this to summarize confusing or complex or lengthy information. In other words. Yeah, you can absolutely say to put it simply, to put it another way, simply put, in other words. Yeah. Not on the other hand. Okay, so just because you see some similar words, it doesn't mean that you can just like replace them with other expressions. These expressions are all used in a very specific way. On the other hand, is used with pros and cons. If we delay the project, we'll have more time. That's positive. On the other hand, the client will be upset. That's a negative. So we use on the other hand with pros and cons, positives and negatives when you're debating or comparing options. Okay. How about this? So notice what I mean is. Yes, we have that verb to be, is. But this is the introduction to the sentence. Then you need the full sentence. The full sentence is we need clear communication between departments. Okay. So you take this, we need clear communication between departments. This is a full sentence on its own. And then you can put what I mean is. What I mean is. So again, you can use this if you were stating a point, but you realized your point got a little long, a little complex, a little confusing, and you want to make sure the person understands. So it would be similar to in other words, or to put it another way, to put it simply, basically, what I mean is, what I mean is. What I mean is maybe we need to clarify the situation with our stakeholders or with our shareholders. Exactly. Exactly. So maybe Alberto was saying he was talking for quite a long time and then his point got lost. So he wants to end by making his point clearly. What I mean is, what I mean is. So it's a great way to transition from your complex point and then to a simple point. What I mean is we need to start this project again from start. Yeah, instead you could just say we need to restart the project or we need to start from scratch. From scratch is means from the very beginning and is extremely common in the business world. So I would say we need to restart this project because restart means start again. Okay, we need to restart this project or we need to start from scratch. We need to start the project from scratch. Those would be the two ways that a native speaker would say it. What you said is fine, but it's just more of a direct translation. Yeah, you could say, let me rephrase that. You can absolutely do that. For sure. If you realize you were being really complicated or really long, let me rephrase that. And then you could say it again. Hopefully, you're going to be clearer and more concise. How about this one? The thing is, okay, so this is when you want to introduce a contrasting point. So maybe someone says, well, we should we need to hire more staff. Okay. And then you can say, the thing is, we don't have any money. The thing is, we don't have any money. It's like, well, unfortunately, the thing is. So you're introducing a contrasting point. Okay. So in this case, the thing is, we don't have enough staff to complete everything this week. So maybe this would be in reply to your boss says, the client expects us to have the project done this week. And then you can say, yeah, I get that. But the thing is, we don't have enough staff to complete everything this week. So you're contrasting to the point that we need to finish this week. Yeah. The thing is, we're broke. So maybe your wife or your friend says, "Let's go on vacation to Hawaii this year." And maybe you say something positive like, "Yeah, Hawaii would be amazing." But the thing is, we're broke. So you're using it to introduce um the contrast that you're unable to do something. Yeah, you can think of it as the point is the thing we need to consider, our situation. Yeah, you can think of it as point. Yeah, like the actual point. Yeah, exactly. Okay. How about this? Well, we saw this one cuz some of the students introduced it and it was great. To put it simply, and then you can condense this to 2 words, but you change the order and say simply put. Okay? So to put it simply, 4 words, or simply put. Simply put, we need to reduce costs before moving forward. To put it simply, we need to reduce costs. In other words, basically, essentially. So, again, generally, I would use simply put if either I said something very confusing, very complex, and it didn't need to be, and I want to make sure everyone understands my point, or if someone else said something very confusing, very complex, and I want to make sure everyone understands the point. Exactly. To put it simply or simply put. And both of them are very common. So I recommend starting with one, but also be familiar with the other one. To put it simply, I need to tidy up my room. Exactly. Exactly. But this would generally follow some sort of long explanation or something that was overly complex that you were discussing. And then you just want to be very direct. Yeah, you can put let me put it simply. Let me put it simply. We don't have enough money to buy a new car. Exactly. So maybe your family is trying to complicate it by making it sound like there's oh, it's because of tariffs or the economy or fuel efficiency. And you're like, no, no, no. Let me put it simply. We just don't have the money. There's no need to make it all complex. It isn't about fuel efficiency, the economy, global warming. It's about money. Simply put, she's a boring person. Yeah. And maybe you could also say to be blunt. Do you guys know that one? To be blunt. You can absolutely use simply put. Just remember, when would I use one of these, Jennifer? When would I say simply put? When would I say to be blunt? Well, it depends. Did you just say something really complex and really long, and now you want to summarize it? If the answer is yes, well, then you simply put. Are you opening your mouth and only saying these words? If the answer is yes, well, then you can introduce it with to be blunt. Because when you say to be blunt, you're going to say something very direct without any other softener. So you're going to say to be blunt, I don't like that shirt, Jennifer. To be blunt, that doesn't look good on you. And that's it. How about this one? More specifically. More specifically. Okay. So you can absolutely just use specifically. We need approval from the finance team. Now, more specifically, this is if someone already took something broad and made it more specific. Okay. So maybe someone said, we don't need company-wide approval. We only need department approval. And then the same person or a different person could take broad, specific, more specific. And then say, more specifically, we need approval from the finance team. So you went from company, team, and then a specific team. Okay. So if you use more specifically, well, then it has to go from broad, specific, more specific. Otherwise, you could just use specifically. Yeah. If you say to be blunt, you're going to say something that sounds mean, that sounds rude, that sounds critical, that doesn't sound politically correct, that doesn't sound like something a supportive friend, teacher, spouse, family member would say. For sure. So people could think it's brutal. Absolutely. Yeah, this could be a good one. More specifically, you will need to move to Mumbai if you want to have a career in Bollywood. So, have a career or make it, not make career, make it in Bollywood, but have a career. Have a career in Bollywood. Okay. This is good because maybe you went from specific India and then more specific, Mumbai. So that could be a great example, though. Yeah. Harsh, abrasive. Nice summary. Exactly. Oh, this is very nice. I want to come, but the thing is, I'm very busy. Exactly, exactly. So the thing is, that's you can absolutely use this in a casual context with friends. You can use this when you want to decline an invitation, like go to a party or whatever, go to the mall, whatever it might be. Very nice. I like that. What I'm saying is we need a more efficient process. So again, maybe you're talking and you're trying to make this point, but then other people don't seem to be getting it. And they seem to be summarizing something else or discussing something else. So you this is another way of saying to clarify. What I'm saying is. So again, remember what I'm saying because it's in the present continuous because it's taking place now. It's possible to use a different verb tense. If you're summarizing something that happened yesterday, you might say, what I said was, we needed a more efficient process. So it certainly is possible to use other verb tenses, but let's just imagine this is taking place now. What I'm saying is, okay. And then in spoken English, a little pause. And then we need a more efficient process. This is a complete sentence. What I'm saying is introduces a complete sentence. So again, it means to clarify. Now let's move on to some transition expressions. So when you want to transition from one idea to another idea, from one topic to another topic, from a positive to a negative, okay? So there could be different levels of transitions. Anyway, let's get back to the main issue we discussed earlier. So, anyway is a very common one. If you ever hear native speakers say anyways with an S, just know it is so common in speech. It should be in the dictionary, although technically the correct word is anyway. But anyways with the S is so commonly used by natives. Just understand it's part of our vocabulary. Okay. But technically, the word is anyway. Anyway, let's get back to the main issue we discussed earlier. So you want to transition. You were talking about issue A, and then someone mentioned AI. And then all of a sudden, the conversation shifted to AI, but that's not the purpose. You need to approve the budget for the finance team. Okay. So you say, anyway, let's get back to the main issue we discussed earlier. Okay. So let's return to the conversation. Anyway, let's stick to the original plan. Exactly. Anyway, break is over. Let's get back to work. Yeah, this could be native speakers use anyway a lot when we also want to end a conversation. Anyway, I got to get going. Anyway, it was nice chatting because it sounds so abrupt to just say, I got to get going. So we use words like anyway, well, so, just to soften it. So that's a perfect one. I really like that. Great job. How about this? By the way, the client asked about the delivery timeline during our call. So we use this when nobody was talking about that topic. Okay. So maybe we're talking about AI and then you just want to introduce this and it wasn't being discussed. So you use by the way to let people know that you're just going to introduce information. Okay. By the way, the client asked us about the delivery timeline during our call. How about this one? Now, this is a pretty easy one. So maybe you're talking about, so here, if you're talking about the sales figures, well, maybe previously you were talking about cybersecurity. So cybersecurity. Now, let's take a look at the sales figures. So you're going to switch topics from cybersecurity to sales. If it were me and I'm teaching, if I'm talking about vocabulary and then I want to go to pronunciation, I can say, now let's clarify the pronunciation. So you can certainly just say, let's take a look at the sales figures, but now is just a great way to transition. By the way, hi there to every student. Love that. And hello. Okay, how about this? All right. All right, let's begin the meeting and go over the agenda. So all right is one of the most common that you'll hear. Anyway, as well. Anyway, all right. Those are two of the most common. All right, let's begin the meeting. All right, everyone, let's start our class today. All right, let's move on to pronunciation. All right, let's open it up to questions. So, all right, and then you can transition to a different topic. You can start a topic or even all right, let's end for today. So you can use it at the start, the middle, the end. Any point in any conversation, you can use all right. All right, all right, all right. One of the most common. Exactly. All right, let's start our class. All right, let's complete this project. All right, let's call it a day. Exactly. All right, let's go to the gym. Then the restaurant. Ooh, all right, let's make a deal. I love that. All right. One word is just an alternative spelling. Technically, it isn't correct. Technically, it's two words, all right. But because in spoken English, it's pronounced as one word, all right, that native speakers will spell it as one word, especially in text messages, informal, and a lot of native speakers just don't even know that the spelling is two words. Okay. So just know that the correct spelling is two words. In spoken English, it sounds like one word. All right. All right. How about this? Moving forward, we'll focus on improving efficiency. Okay, so moving forward means into the future. So I could transition to you right now and say, moving forward, we'll focus on pronunciation. So it means starting from my next slide. So it could be moving forward right now. So now we'll focus on pronunciation, or it could be in the future. So maybe it's the next project, the next budget, the next conference. So it could be right now or it could be next year. It just depends on the context. So moving forward. So maybe you would say, moving forward, I need to focus on pronunciation. So this means as you're studying in the future, it could be starting this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, whatever it might be. That said, okay, this is an important one, very common. That said, we still need to consider the risks. That said, you're using this, you state something and then you use that said and you clarify something you just said. Generally, you're going to introduce a contrast. So let's hear that said, we still need to consider the risks. So this sounds like a caution. So if I'm considering working with a company, we need to consider the risks. It sounds like I'm cautioning, right? So before I say that said, I need to introduce something that doesn't sound like caution. That sounds like I'm ready to sign the deal. I'm ready to move forward. So it might be something like, this company is amazing. They have a great track record. Their pricing is competitive. They are going to fulfill all of our requirements, and I think we'll definitely get the result we want with this company. So I just listed 4 positive things. That sounds like I'm ready to sign the contract. But now I'm going to introduce a negative. But I just said 4 positives. It would be weird if I just say a negative without some sort of transition. So the transition is that said, that said, that said, we still need to consider the risks. So you might use this in a very simple way and say something like, I'm really proud of the progress I've made with my English fluency this last year. That said, I still need to improve my pronunciation. So positive, negative, and you use that said to connect them. It's a very common one. Okay, at the same time, we need to manage costs carefully. So, this could literally mean at the same time that something is still happening. So, you start project A, and then as project A is happening, you need to manage the costs. So, literally at the same time. But it can also just be a contrast. You might say, we're ready to start project A and it's going to start tomorrow. At the same time, we need to manage costs carefully. So, it could literally be at the same time or more of just a contrast. Okay, let's look at some phrases for active listening because this is very important. A part of being a great communicator, an important part is your listening skills because how can you truly address someone's concerns if you didn't take the time to listen to their concerns? Or how can you answer someone's question if you didn't fully listen to their question and truly understand their question? Okay. So active listening. These are some phrases that you're using to show that you were listening. So you can simply say, right, right. So you're saying, right. So you're saying. So the person finishes talking, you're listening, and then you might say, right. So you're saying. Now, right here is just a word filler. It doesn't necessarily mean correct or I agree. It's just like confirming, right. 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 So sometimes we just say that word to show we're listening. Right. So you're saying. So you're saying. So you're saying the budget has already been approved. So you're clarifying what you heard. You're getting confirmation. But and then maybe the person said, "No, no, no. The budget hasn't been approved." And then clearly you didn't listen properly or the person didn't explain their point properly. Okay, how about this? Exactly, exactly. So the person's talking, you're nodding your head, and then this is to show agreement. Exactly, exactly. So maybe the person saying, "Yeah, there are a lot of risks. It's really outdated." Exactly, exactly. I agree with you. Exactly. That's why we need to update the process immediately. Okay, so that's a very useful one. Exactly. And if you want to make someone feel like you heard them, say exactly. It's a great one to have. Or simply, sure, sure. So instead of just saying, I can send you the revised document, just add a sure, sure. It's a casual thing, but it certainly will sound very natural. Sure, I can send you the revised document. And it sounds more agreeable. Of course. This is a great one. Of course, I'll help you prepare. So instead of just saying, I'll help you prepare, saying of course makes it sound like you're happy to, or it's not something you can even consider a big deal. So of course I'll help you prepare. I use this a lot with my students. Of course I'll explain that to you. Of course I'll review your pronunciation. Of course I'll answer your question. Of course. Just because I want my student to know that I don't feel bothered by it. So that's when we would use it to let the person know. It isn't an imposition. I don't feel bothered by it. This one as well. I see. I see. I see. So generally, as you're nodding your head, I see. I see. I see. And then whatever. That helps clarify the situation. I see. I see. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'll help you. For sure. That's a good one as well. For sure. Definitely. I'll help you. Definitely. For sure. No problem. Yeah, all of those are great. Of course, I'm enjoying this live. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Got it. Got it. This is an important one. So if someone's saying, okay, so Bob will do this, Mary will do this, Jane will do this, Jennifer will do that. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So just to confirm that you understand, to confirm that you know what your task is. But if you just say got it, well, that doesn't mean that you do. So you can rephrase it and say, I'll make those updates today. So the person knows what you understood. Got it. I'll make those updates today. Got it. I'll send you the report after lunch. Got it. I'll book your hotel for 3 days. Got it. I'll email the client with the samples, whatever it might be. Or this one. That makes sense. That makes sense. So this one I use a lot and I hear natives use it a lot, and generally we're showing the other person that we understand their point. So maybe the client is saying, "Yeah, we need to postpone the deadline because one of our main people just quit and we're short staffed now." And then that makes sense given the current timeline. That makes sense. You can continue on Or you can just say, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's another way of saying, I understand and I agree with you. That makes sense. That makes sense. So that's a great one to have as well. All right, everyone, we are at the end of our class today. Oh, notice I said all right. And I promise I didn't think about saying that. It just came out naturally because imagine I just said, we're at the end of our class. Don't you feel like having all right? I used it as a way to transition. It just makes it flow a lot better. So native speakers truly use these all the time. It's just such a common thing to use these transition words, or else you could sound too direct, too harsh, and just maybe a little too authoritative, even. So, using these transitions are so helpful, and they're simple words, and that was the point. But you probably heard all of these words before, but just need to make sure that you feel comfortable using them because there were a lot of questions about when to use this or is this the same as that? And some of the time it wasn't. So hopefully now you feel more comfortable with the ones you learned today. And all right, to transition again, I have this free speaking guide for you. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. So you can just get it from my website, jforrestenglish.com, or you can enter /free-guide to take you right to the URL. And also remember, if you want to keep learning these expressions and you also want my feedback to make sure you're using it correctly in written English and you're using it correctly in spoken English and to help you improve all areas of your English, you can get that support in my program, the Finally Fluent Academy. So you can look for the information in the description, or again, just go to my website and you'll see the Finally Fluent Academy and you can click on it and get all the information you need. And that's the end of our class today. So again, put yes, yes, yes if you enjoyed this lesson and you want more lessons like this in the future. I had so many other words I could have taught you, simple words that native speakers use for transitions in daily speech. So if you want me to make another lesson just like this, let me know because I have a lot more words to share. And like this lesson is the best way you can show support for the channel, and subscribe so you're notified every time I go live, every time I post a new lesson as well. All right, everyone, you're very welcome. Have a great day as well. Woohoo, you're very welcome. Bye. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.